Before we get started in this video, I want you to ask the question of yourself, and you can even stop the video after this question is asked and then come back to it. But the question is, and it's very basic, is what emotions have I not processed yet? What stories have I not resolved? What feelings am I still sitting uncomfortable with? Now, this could be something that goes as far back as a decade ago. It could go as far back as 3 decades ago. It could go as not far back as 3 days ago. We store everything that happens in our life. We take the tally of everything that goes on in our life, and we store it in certain ways within our subconscious and our conscious brain. And so we basically are dealing with these things all the time. We just may not know it. So a thing that I want you to understand is that you're carrying all of this. And the question is, how much of it have you dealt with? I wanted to just kick it right off with that question. Now, if you stopped and come back, that's great. But what we're going to get into very quickly is a story on unprocessed emotions, how it can affect you, and then how you can actually start to process those emotions. So the reason why I'm doing this video right now is because I had a dear friend who passed away about several weeks ago. Didn't hear about it until a week after. And then we went to the celebration of life a week ago. And sometimes when you hear certain things, you're like, oh, that happened. It is what it is. And you're at peace with it, like almost immediately. And that's just, it is what it is. There's really no other way to put it. However, with this, and I don't know if you can sympathize with it or if you had the same experience, is that this seemed to have struck at the core of me. It hit a chord in my heart and in my psyche that I couldn't let it go. It was so weird. And then it began to tumble over because I began to begin shaming myself for not having been able to just take the news and move on. So it starts to beget itself, right? You're saying, oh, I'm so sad about this. And then you say, wow, I'm really hung up on this. Wow, I'm really frustrated that I'm hung up on this. Man, I'm frustrated that I'm hung up on this, and I'm sad about it. And it just keeps going. And for this particular scenario, I found out that I had not processed a lot of things that were on top of it. A lot of things. And I know there's something extremely vague about I haven't processed things from my past, but it's a particular thing in the past. I've come to peace with many things in my past, and one of those things was, I guess we'll get into this as well. One of those things was forgiving my father, and it wasn't even anything that he had done. It was just forgiving the past, forgiving the situation, and forgiving my mother as well. And so that put me at peace with a lot of stuff from my early childhood. However, there was so much that happened in high school that I never really stopped to deal with. And coming out of high school, I had an extremely difficult time just stepping into post school. I went to a college right away. I was diagnosed with mono, and right before that, diagnosed with Lyme's disease. And so my body was fairly beat up. I was not in great shape. Was very, very fatigued all the time. And one could say it was a lot of mental fatigue. Like I really didn't want to leave high school. I was depressed and sad about that, parting with friends, going to this new place in college. And it was almost like, this is going to be really a sudden analogy, but I remember watching the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Leatherface essentially captures somebody, and then he brings him to the basement, and then just closes the door, and it's just like it shuts really violently. It's not even what's happening there or what he just did. It's like, oh my God, that door just shut really quickly. That's what it felt like leaving high school. It was just all of a sudden like boom. you got one summer to kick it and say goodbye, and then everybody goes their total separate ways, and you don't really see a life after that social circle, all those things that built up and all those connections that you made and relationships that you created. And I I guess I kind of just put all that stuff in the trunk or somewhere and just didn't deal. And I I got the news that this friend had passed, a dear high school friend, and I'd been in touch with this person a little bit after high school, but it was so surreal. It wasn't even like real to me. I felt like it was a different lifetime. And I had not, I hadn't made peace with anything really in high school. And I never expected myself to. I never thought that I would have to see any of those friends again, even though I keep in touch with some of them, but I never I never resolved or reconciled with the person who I was in high school, and the way I saw myself as a musician, like an up and coming musician and an athlete, like a first time boyfriend, all this stuff. And I just, I took all of it and compartmentalized it, and I never processed it. And here came this scenario with a friend passing away, and my body felt like it could not find peace. Cortisol levels through the roof, and there was just something eating at me, and the mystery of it was a big deal as well. And if you know anything about being discomforted, there's a compounding discomfort on top of it by not knowing why it's happening. And so I really I couldn't, and this is the past week, this is very recent, so I'm still going through it and processing it. And I had done this with another friend's passing back in 2007, and I just couldn't bring myself to go to their funeral, their celebration of life. And so I drove, and I just didn't go. And I then got into a lot of cyclical just like behavior of self-harm after that, and it did not help me at all. It set me back in processing this friend's death, their passing, years. I would say even now, I would say a decade, but years. By not, and I could have gone to the funeral and not gone to it, but I just didn't deal with it at all. I thought that I could again compartmentalize it. And with this, I knew that I had to go to the celebration of life. I had to talk to people. I had to go back to therapy. I had to start writing this out. I had to talk to my mom. And so my mom, she was a cancer nurse for about 40 years. And so she has held the hand of many people and families dealing with the winter of their lives. And talking to her was really helpful, even though sometimes I avoid that. And I went and I spoke about this in a shorter post on a story, but in the beginning, when I entered, I just felt that there was going to be no way to feel this is just going to be eternal sadness. I was just so sad. And obviously it's not about me. It's about this person that passed away, but I just saw no peace coming out of this entire situation. And wouldn't you know it, by the end of the service, it was not even a peace I could ever imagine. It was a resolve, and the only word I can apply to it is gratitude. I just felt gratitude for knowing this person, gratitude for having been in their life, even the short way that I felt, gratitude for being around all the people that shared in this person's life. And at the end of it, at service, I felt just a deep, profound sense of love. Unconditional, community love, self-love, whatever it was. It just felt like love in its purest form. And going to that service was extremely difficult. But I wasn't going to get to the place or the resolve without going there and accepting that this person had passed, and accepting that this is a part of my life, and this is a part of life. People pass away as we go on. And I've had to explore that peace, that love, that serenity at the end of it ever since I left. And there's something extremely like just divine about it. There's something very unconditionally welcoming about it, and exploring the gratitude of it is huge. And so, in exploring that, I've found that I've processed a lot of emotions, but also uncovered a lot of other stuff that I still have yet to process, and that's okay. That's totally fine. It's about discovering the line that is between me and these unprocessed emotions, as opposed to being like, oh, why am I freaking out? Why am I doing this? Because what can happen when you don't process your emotions is a pattern of self-harm. It can manifest itself physically, in your posture, in the way that you behave with other people, in the way that you behave with yourself, in the way that you see yourself, in the way that you have a relationship with substance, in a way that you have a relationship with your family. By not processing emotions, you can die. I mean, this is just your cortisol levels go through the roof, and it can create illness, all types of stuff. And these are all things that are readily available for you at the just any form of Googling it, and I can put some resources down in the description as well. But it can kill you. It can really eat at you, and it can manifest into this cycle of unbeknownst self-harm and intrusive thoughts that will just eat you up. And if you don't know what you don't know and it's killing you, that's an awful place to be. And I knew that I had to do something about it because it uncovered so much. There's more to deal with than I've already dealt with. Just put it like that. It's in the knowing that I have these things to deal with that is a giant victory for me. It's a giant step forward. And in knowing and figuring out there are things that I need to deal with, great. I'd wrapped up therapy like several months ago, and I was like, I think we're pretty good here, like there's more work to do. And it's not happening in a way where it's like, oh no, like there was this giant event that happened and I did a thing and something, it's not that at all. It's just discovering you have unprocessed emotions can be as private, quiet, and pernicious as you just sitting there and thinking, oh, without even saying it out loud. I don't know if pernicious was the right word, but it can be a very quiet thing that happens. It can be a silent thing that happens, you realizing it. And one of the ways that I dealt with unprocessed emotions, a bevy of unprocessed emotions, where I go back to the beginning, was when I forgave my father and my mother. And it wasn't for anything that they did, purposefully. It was just the way that things shook out and the way that I always viewed it and the story that I gave everything, and then it would then beget, reality and things moving forward. When I forgave my parents, it freed me from the story that I was making up that was basically the bedrock was basically and foundation was all these unprocessed emotions. And so, or accepting a lot of things as well. So acceptance, I think, plays a big role in processing emotions. And once I did that, I was able to not only view like my parents in a different light, but I was able to view myself in a very different light and view my life and how I can operate in it. Like it gave me an autonomy and agency beyond what I would have ever imagined. And so in all of that happening, it was like gaining a superpower. And it also did great things for my health as well, because there was no avoidance, in interacting with my parents, or any avoidance in interacting with people that I felt were emblematic of my parents, or avoiding any situations I felt that would have an outcome like I did as a child. And so I then was free of that. And what happens on the other end of that is the ability to love, the ability to give like really freely and be present with people. For me, that's been my experience. And so in processing emotions, especially with the passing of the friend back in 2007, that didn't really happen until it was 2007. I want to say I didn't really get anywhere near that until, oh gosh, at least 2011, 2012, 2011. And even then it was scratching the surface, man. That's all okay. We all process differently. The question is, do you know what you need to process? Do you know what you have that you have not processed? And back to the question at the beginning, what stories, what feelings, what emotions have you not processed? And I'll challenge you further, what does it look like going through that and dealing with it and coming to some form of reconciliation? It may not be forgiveness. It may not be forgiveness at all. It may simply be going back to a space and just feeling what it feels like to be in that space. It may be sitting with the thought. It may be being quiet, sitting and meditating on it. It may be a lot of different things, but at some point, you can't really beat the tab. You can't beat the tally. The toll comes like at some point in time, and it definitely has done that for me. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for everything that I had with this person and experienced with them, and like all the memories coming back, and it just really prompts a lot of new actions going forward for myself. We'll touch back on this down the road because I'll be processing this. I'm sure that you'll be hopefully getting something out of this video, because a lot of times we may not even know why we're acting out, what we're responding to, just reacting to ghosts, and we don't even know why it's happening. And the second that we can start to not even process the emotion, but face the things that we haven't been dealing with, that's when we can start the work. So appreciate you being here. Hope you got something of value from this video. We will see you in the next one.